Can you tell
Certainly.
our audience what?
You're in charge of LA County. That's the 88 cities in LA County and the 16 or so unincorporated areas. It's a $460 million budget. It's got 2,100 employees, including 750 deputy district attorneys who are the prosecutors in court every day. And it does 180,000 criminal cases every single year. The DA actually has, the only boss of the DA is really the people who elect him. So the LA DA does not take orders from the governor, the attorney general, the mayor, the police chief, the sheriff, the city council, or the board of supervisors. You're effectively a governing body of one. And George Gascon showed us that power when he became the DA, having never personally prosecuted a case in his entire life. He came in after destroying the safety of San Francisco when he was the DA there. And on his first day, first hour, first email, he changed the direction of criminal justice here in the county in favor of criminals and away from victims.
Okay. So George Gascon, a lot of our viewers do not like George Soros. Is George Gascon simply like a puppet for George Soros? Can you explain to us the connection between the two, Gascon and
Certainly.
Soros?
So when Gascon came in to Los Angeles and ran against the DA at that time, Jackie Lacey, he almost lost in the primary. But George Soros came in the general election right before that November 2020 election. He dumped in over $7.5 million, him and his progressive far left supporters. And they basically, had millions more dollars than Jackie Lacey and won that election. At this point, we are well aware of the George Soros playbook. Outside money that is already indicated that they're going to come in for at least $2 million. My campaign has raised $1.5 million on its way to $2.5 million from over 3,000 donors, half Democrat, half Republican, across every demographic in Los Angeles County, whether it's Black, White, Asian, Latino, Democrat, Independent, Republican, all over the entire geography of LA County. And we're ready to meet anything that George Gascon / George Soros can throw up against us.
Mm-hmm. Did some gang members commit murder after Gascon refused to prosecute? Did those cases happen?
Yeah, no, we've had a recent case that's happened is a couple from New Zealand. We're down in Fashion Island in Newport. They had gone there to just a shop. And sure enough, 3 guys in a car come up to them. 2 guys jump up. They put a gun to the head of the husband, a guy named Doug McKay, to try and get his expensive watch. Patricia McKay, sadly, ends up in front of the car, and the guy driving the car drags her 65 feet to her death. But it turns out that the guy dragging the car had done the same thing up in LA. Where he had basically taken a gun and held it to someone's head while he got the guy's Rolex. He'd done that a year before. But Gascon, rather than putting that guy in prison, ended up dealing the case down to probation. And so he was out. So he was then driving the car a year later that ran over this poor New Zealand woman. So Gascon's policies is so pro-criminal policies of not bringing the gun enhancement, not bringing the gang enhancement, not going after juveniles who are stealing just under $950 from stores. Those policies have actually resulted in real life harm to people throughout this entire county and throughout this entire region.
It's an outrage. I think it's an outrage. And I think there was also a case, a Korean-American businessman in downtown Los Angeles. LA Times did a piece about it, that it was a shop owner. I think they sold wigs, and he was stabbed by a criminal, but I think he was also released or something like that. Are you familiar with that story too?
Yeah, no, that story is another tragic story where had Gascons implemented policies that went after criminals instead of coddling criminals and making the policies in criminals' favor, there's a serious chance that that particular store owner wouldn't have met his demise at the hand of that defendant.
Why do you think LA Times keep on endorsing him all the time? And how come he keeps on beating these recall? We want to recall him. We want to get rid of him. We think he's a harm to this community. We don't like George Soros either. How come he keeps on beating all this? Is it because of the money? What's your opinion on it? And why does the LA Times endorse him? Yeah, all the time.
Again, I don't know what's going on through the LA Times. I presented what I thought was a very compelling argument. I said George Gascon has never prosecuted or defended a criminal case in his whole life. I've been doing it for 34 years. 10 of it as a prosecutor. I've done 100 cases as a prosecutor, 24 years as a defense attorney. I've done over 200 cases. So I said George Gascon's experience is literally 0 versus 34 years for Hochman. I also said his record of public safety is a record of public safety failure, where violent crimes, hate crimes, property crimes are all up double digits every year he's been in office. Yet the LA Times seems to think that only George Gascon can bring certain reforms to the criminal justice system. This too is wrong. I come from a perspective of being a defense attorney and a prosecutor. I've dealt with the courts for 34 years. There are problems in the courts. I'm the first one to tell you. If George Gascon has highlighted those problems, great. The problem I have with him is his solutions. His solutions are basically to de-incarcerate people who are violent and serious threats to our public safety, and then just hope that safety is going to get better. Well, he ran his social experiment now for 3.5 years. Safety has not gotten better, it's gotten worse. And therefore, George Gascon, who refuses to change his policies, needs to go.
Yeah. So we tend to blame George Gascon a lot. Even the Korean American community, they know about him because of his infamous name. They think he's the one who brought all these crimes. But also, we can't ignore the laws. That is intact. Like, for instance, Proposition 47. Can you explain to our audience what it is and how harmful it was for the community?
Certainly. So Proposition 47 was passed in 2014. And one of the reasons it was passed that year is that year was considered one of our safest years in the last 50 years.
2014.
So we sort of, 2014, 10 years ago. In fact, it's my target year. If I can get back to the safety of 2014, then we'll have that safety, which is the best safety in 50 years. We are so far away from that now, it's hard to even imagine. But what happened in 2014 is we started to take our safety for granted. Then George Gascon was an author of Proposition 47 when he was the DA in San Francisco. And what it basically did is it turned felonies into misdemeanors, into much lower classification crimes. So now if you steal just under $950, it's considered a misdemeanor. If you engage in certain type of drug use for heroin and fentanyl and methamphetamine, it's gone from being a felony to a misdemeanor, which was bad enough. But then George Gascon comes into office in 2020, and he says, I'm not going to prosecute misdemeanors. So it effectively is a get out of jail free card for people engaging in all these series of crimes. So now we have what we are in 2024, where crime has just consistently gone up for the last 4 years.
So 10 years can really change the whole thing, right? The whole fabric of the community.
It can absolutely change it, but just as quickly as it changed in the wrong direction, we can begin to change it in the right direction. The 750 deputy district attorneys, they voted 98% to support their boss's recall when that recall was a possibility. That means that these folks very much want to get back to the business of doing their job. And I've met with over 300 of them. I've gotten their endorsement. And again, they very much want to go ahead and bring safety and justice for the people of Los Angeles County. Similarly with law enforcement, I've met with tens of thousands of law enforcement because not only have I been a prosecutor, I've been a defense attorney, as I mentioned. I've also been the president of the LA City Ethics Commission and the co-founder of the LA Sheriff's Foundation. And so I've had a chance to meet with hundreds of police officers, and they are incredibly frustrated. George Gascon refuses to bring a lot of the cases that they bring to them that have real victims. But Gascon has these policies that don't look at the facts, they don't look at the law, they just institute his personal political agenda, which is absolutely wrong. My entire candidacy is to remove politics from the DA's office and go back to what they always used to do, is just look at the facts, look at the law, determine who the true threats are to our public safety, put them behind bars, and deal with the ones that aren't. Your first-time nonviolent offender could very well has to pay their debt to society if they violate society's laws. But those are situations where non-prison alternatives might be appropriate. Community service, if they want to figure out a way to give back to the community but not go to prison, or restitution. If they stole something, pay it back. Or if they have a serious mental illness or a drug addiction, that's where diversion programs come in. But what you can't do is what Gascon is doing, which is literally close your eyes and pretend that certain crimes aren't occurring when they absolutely are.
He's a co-author of Proposition 47, George Gascon, and you said he was the DA at San Francisco, right, during that time?
Correct.
Was he also getting George Soros money back then too? Because I want to get to the root of the cause of this, how it all happened.
So back when he became the DA of San Francisco, he got appointed by Gavin Newsom. And George Gascon used to be a police officer.
Yeah.
What happened is, I think he ended up getting in the orbit of George Soros and the Open Society movement. And he figured out that, he wanted to become the police chief of San Francisco because he was in Mesa, Arizona at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the ticket to getting into San Francisco was to adopt these pro-criminal policies. So George Gascon signed up for the George Soros program, and off he went for the last 13 years.
Right. Okay, so cash bail, do you support it or are you against it?
So what I support is dealing with the true risk factors of people who've committed crimes, have been arrested, and now are seeking bail. What I mean by that is that bail has to serve an important function. There's actually a constitutional right in California to get bail, but the amount of the bail has to measure these two risks. The risk that you're going to commit future criminal acts and be a danger to the community, and the risk that you're going to show up or not show up for your next court hearing. So the amount of bail needs to be calibrated to reduce those risks to as low as possible. Now, in the old days, they had a cash bail schedule. It was literally a grid. And it would say, if you committed this crime, then this was your bail. The problem with a grid is that, for people who had a long criminal history, the amount on the grid was probably too low. And for people who didn't have any criminal history, the amount on the grid was probably too high. So what I'm advocating is putting the grid to the side and having a judge come in early in the process, like in the first 24 or 48 hours, so that all the evidence can be presented to the judge about these different risks. And the judge can then set the bail that figures out the most reasonable bail for someone that you have the ability to afford that deals with all these risks.
Yeah. So you explained to us that you were the former president of the Los Angeles City Ethics Commission. Between when to when? What year to what year?
So I was on the commission from 2011 to 2016 for 5 years, and I was president for over a year.
Okay. Even City Hall, I think this corruption thing, it's not just county. In City Hall, you had like a bunch of former councilmen getting charged for corruption, bribery. It's like you're watching almost like an HBO, crime drama almost. Did you notice those corruption back then when you were the president of the Los Angeles City Ethics Commission and issued a complaint about it? Or I wanted to know your life regarding when you were in the Ethics Commission, because I didn't hear a lot about that story.
Certainly. So again, we knew about certain levels of corruption, but the LA City Ethics Commission doesn't have the full investigative powers of either a DA's office or the FBI. So we dealt with the corruption that was in front of us. And the other thing about the LA City Ethics Commission is it can give out fines, but it can't hold people accountable for prison. Now, what happened with, as you pointed out, 4 different council members, 3 of whom have been charged by the feds, 1 has been charged by the DA's office. Those 3 that got charged by the federal government have been convicted and are going to be going to jail. That's Mark Ridley Thomas, Jose Huizar, Mitch Englander. And it was a whole bunch of different type of corruption that they were involved with. Interestingly, the DA's office didn't bring those 3 cases. If I'm the DA, we are going to make sure that the public integrity section of the DA's office is well staffed, well trained, and well equipped to go after the political corruption throughout all of LA County.
Yeah, because the city hall is such a mess, and then we have George Gascon and Proposition 47, and even Proposition 57 also not good, right?
Correct. Proposition 57 let out early a whole bunch of non-violent, non-serious offenses, but it turns out when you look at the list that, for instance, human trafficking is considered a non-serious, non-violent offense. Raping an unconscious woman is considered a non-violent, non-serious offense. So a whole bunch of these propositions were marketed to the public with ideas that they were trying to help, but the fine print wasn't revealed, and it turns out they've ended up hurting in many, many situations.
So that's why a lot of Korean Americans here in Southern California, not just Southern, even Northern California, they've been leaving here a lot, because of this whole mess, and they just don't. I mean, I think a lot of people were disappointed that George Gascon kept beating the recall, but hopefully, I mean, do you
right?
think,
He never. Yeah. What's interesting is that the recall never got to the ballot. They had a problem with the signatures that were gathered, because you got to get enough signatures in order to then have the recall get to the ballot. Had the recall ever got to the ballot, he would have lost 2/3, 1/3. I mean, he literally is the most unpopular politician in all of LA County. But unfortunately, they had problems getting it to the ballot. But we're not going to have that problem now on the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. He's going to be on that ballot. I'm going to be on that ballot, just the 2 of us at this point.
Yeah.
And he cannot escape the fate that awaits him, which is basically losing that election, getting the heck out of the DA's office, and allowing someone like me to go back and work with prosecutors, work with law enforcement, work with victims, work with communities like the Korean American community to restore safety throughout this entire county.
So I'm wondering, who are these people who keep on, voting for George Gascon? I wonder, who are these people? Because I didn't see a lot. I asked people around, did you vote for Gascon? Because since Gascon caused such harm to our community, or is it the what is it, like unions? I want to know the voting blocks who support him. I'm wondering who they are.
So it's a great question. So basically, I think any voter that gets information about this campaign and understands what Gascon's policies have done to imperil their safety can't vote for him. So the people who ended up voting for him, and again, remember, he only got 25% of the vote on March 5th in the primary election, a historic low for a district attorney seeking re-election. So the people who voted for him there's people on the very progressive left that believe we should abolish prisons, and they think George Gascon's doing a great job. And then there's the people that I fear, which are the uninformed voter. Those are the people who don't take much effort at all to learn anything about the race, and either are reflexively, they look at it and they say, okay, well, if the LA Times endorsed him, I'm going to vote for him, without doing any of their own research. Because I'm convinced that if people spend any level of time on this race, and they understand George Gascon's pro-criminal policies, they understand why those policies are responsible for the fear that they feel in their society now when it comes to fearing crime at all times of the day. When they get to know anything about me and my 34 years of criminal justice experience, that if they are informed, I will win that vote 10 out of 10 times.
So the media does have power still, right? Their endorsements, people say that endorsements doesn't matter, but I think in local races, probably it does, right?
The media has some power. The LA Times used to actually have a lot more power. Its subscription database is far lower. Mm-hmm. And its editorial was such an exercise in illogic. They basically said that George Gascon's policies had benefited us all. Now, I don't know how you can say that to the person who's had their car broken into, the person who's had their home broken into, their store broken into, the person who suffered from hate crimes, the persons who lost a son or a daughter to fentanyl poisoning. I don't know where the LA Times comes off and somehow says that Gascon's policies had benefited us all.
Soros buy them up.
By the way, I'll tell you the group that he has benefited, the criminals.
Yeah.
The criminals are excited about George Gascon. He is the best DA for criminals in the history of DAs.
So Jackie Lacey, the former LA County District Attorney, that was as safe as 2014. And I had a phone call with her, and she told me once that she even wonders that George Soros even bought some of the reporters or the people there in LA Times. She even wondered that because she couldn't understand their commentary. It was such a sad thing to read. That's what she told me. I mean,
I can see why she would say that, because it doesn't make sense. When people are advocating positions that make no sense, that fly in the face of facts, statistics. I mean, the California Department of Justice has come out with the statistics over the 4 years of George Gascon, and not shockingly, violent crimes are up, property crimes are up, hate crimes are up, fentanyl poisonings are up. Human trafficking we're the capital of human trafficking. Again, Jackie Lacey must be frustrated. I'm frustrated that the LA Times seems to be stuck in a worldview that views George Gascon and in no way is critical of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, George Gascon has messed up our security at a pretty high level.
Yeah.
And the fact that the LA Times won't come to that realization is just shocking.
Do you think George Gascon as a human being has more sympathy to criminals than victims? That's what I asked.
It's an interesting question. I've never analyzed George Gascon as a human being because my focus is on his policies. So he might be a really nice guy. You might want to have dinner with him. He might be a mean guy. I have no idea. But I
don't care about the personal characters. I care more about policy.
Exactly. And that's where I come from. So George Gascon's policies, his pro-criminal, anti-victim policies, I couldn't disagree with more. Whether he's a nice guy or he truly believes in this or doesn't believe in this, he's implementing them. And as long as he's implementing them, I will beat him at the ballot box.
I interviewed him once, and I think he's a nice guy, but I think that kind of triggers my anger more, in a way. Because how could you be so calm and so nice while all these crazy criminalities going on in this community, in the county? It just angers. It's not just me. All the people that are well informed regarding local politics, county politics, they are pissed. They are really angry. And I think a lot of people are preparing to leave if you lose, Nathan. So they're really asking me.
It's an extra responsibility to win this race. It's interesting. I was at a campaign event last week, and an 80-year-old woman came up to me, and she basically said that she lived in her community her whole life. She loved to go for nighttime walks. And in the last 6 months, she's refused to do it because crime has just gotten so bad in her neighborhood. She lives in fear. And so she basically broke down crying. And she said, you got to win because I don't want to live in fear any longer.
Yeah.
And that message is a message I take to heart every single day. This race is incredibly important. It doesn't mean that a presidential race or a Senate race isn't. They're important too. But there is no more important race on the ballot on November 5th that will affect your and your family's safety immediately than the DA's race.
Yeah. So if Gascon has his own, like George Soros, I wish that there are some other billionaires that would kind of support your race. Is that happening, or you can't even talk about it because it might be a PAC that?
So I think I know that there are PACs that are forming and that they're out there, and that they're hopefully going to contribute significant dollars into the race. I know that the police unions, firefighters, prison guards, lifeguards, retail restaurant associations, people like maybe even a Rick Caruso are seriously thinking.
He's super
of
popular among the
playing.
Korean community, by the way, Rick Caruso.
Yeah, no, he's supported me. He's now endorsed me. He actually voted for George Gascon back in 2020, but he says that's a mistake. Gascon was given 3.5 years to prove that his vision would work, and Rick Caruso said he's failed. And Rick Caruso's got to know me, and he said Nathan Hawkman can get the job done.
I interviewed,
And
I interviewed Rick Caruso, and Rick told me he couldn't believe how much Gascon changed, because he told me that 20 years ago he wasn't the same person.
Correct. Gascon used to be someone who was really focused on safety and security.
Pro-police, yeah.
Now he's really focused on a far, far left extreme agenda. And people can't understand how he went from one to the other than the fact that it's allowed him to get certain jobs in his life that he probably otherwise wouldn't have gotten.
Do you think homelessness increasing in LA County? I think the latest count is around 70,000. I don't know. I mean, it changes all the time, but do you think that is also because of Gascon, even homelessness issue are increasing? I'm just wondering your opinion, and also, a lot of Koreatown store owners are considering closing due to issue with the homelessness issue. It seems like it's a never-ending story in LA. It's almost like the norm, the new norm now.
Homelessness is an incredibly important problem, because if we don't get our arms around it, you're absolutely right. Korean store owners will leave, not just Korean Americans and not just in Koreatown, but throughout the entire county. Because again, you're not willing to bang your head against the wall, have people come in your stores, steal with impunity, and then deal with the homeless aspect that's immediately outside your stores and encampments. So what law enforcement can do, what the DA's office can do, is be part of the solution. Right now, Gascon has no interest in helping law enforcement deal with the homeless population that are committing a whole bunch of various crimes, whether it's drug use crimes like with methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, whether it's graffiti, vandalism, loitering, prostitution, trespassing. These are these quality of life crimes that are destroying the quality of life in our community. George Gascon says he has no interest in prosecuting. So we can go back to doing that, and hopefully then you partner with all the other agencies out there, with the Department of Mental Health to deal with the people who are going through mental health crises or drug addiction, Department of Vocational Services, basically people who've lost their job, help them get a job. Department of Public Works, we're not going to let the sidewalks in our parks and our subways be the new home of the homeless. If you will do our best to put them in temporary and permanent housing, but they don't have the right to just put a tent in the middle of a street and say that's their home, when laws exist to allow the public to use the public thoroughfares, basically.
Mm-hmm. Gascon claims that violent and property crime decreased. Is it true?
No. Gascon is gaslighting people. He's making people think that the experiences that they are feeling, the real crime they're seeing and hearing and living through, doesn't exist. But again, the California Department of Justice came in with the real statistics of the first 4 years of Gascon, which have now, in their countywide statistics, is not just LA City. And those countywide statistics show that violent crimes, property crimes, hate crimes, fentanyl poisonings, human trafficking, it's all up by double digits every single year that Gascon has been in office.
Wow, so he's just lying through his teeth, huh?
He's sadly mistaken is the nicest thing I will say.
Okay. Any last words you want to say to our audience?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So the Korean American community is a fantastic community that has really helped build Los Angeles County into one of the greatest counties, not only in the United States, but the entire world. But the last 3.5 years have been enormously challenging, as George Gascon has literally implemented policies that have been pro-criminal and anti-victim, that have emboldened criminals to commit a whole wide range of crimes, from robbing stores to robbing people's houses to breaking into their cars to stealing catalytic converters, and everything in between. We can change that. We can change that with the vote on November 5th. So if ever there was an election you need to vote in, it's this upcoming election, and it's for DA. There'll be Gascon on the ballot. There'll be myself, Nathan Hoffman, on the ballot. I will bring 34 years of criminal justice experience against Gascon's 0 years of experience to restore safety throughout our entire community. And I will do that by listening and learning from all the communities, including the Korean American community, to figure out what the exact problems are in your community, how best to fix them, get the resources to fix them, and implement the fix immediately. I'm not going to wait months or years, as Gascon has even tried to do, and he has failed in doing so. So it would be an honor and a privilege to serve as the next district attorney. And please, if this makes sense to you, please get out and vote in the November 5th election.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more question. There are people, even among people in the press business, that some like they hate the police. I don't understand it. So I think that wave of movement kind of took over some council seats, as you might already know, in the city council. I think even in one city councilwoman, I think she wanted to abolish the police. So you hear all this nonsense, and so I talked with them, as a journalist, and they say police are bullies. I think they give examples of police brutality, and some have been saying that these are people, many portion of the police department, they used to be bullies back in their college. I don't know. They give these examples that these are the type of bullies who become police, and they're just police who bully people. So what do you say to that? There are people who really do hate police and law enforcement. So what do you say to people who believe that?
Here's what I say to those people. I will be the only DA in history that not only has set up an LA Sheriff's Foundation to get resources for the Sheriff's Department, but actually personally prosecuted a deputy sheriff back in the 1990s when I was a federal prosecutor, along with my team that went after 16 deputy sheriffs who were stealing drugs, guns, and money from drug dealers. We went after them, we convicted them, we put them in jail. I have no tolerance for any police officer that engages in criminal conduct. They will be prosecuted. In fact, law enforcement, when I talk to them, says to me that no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop. And I agree with that. So of the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers, sadly, there will be a small subsection of officers who commit crimes and will face the same type of criminal punishments that other criminals face if they engage in criminal conduct. But the overwhelming number of law enforcement officers, when the bullets are flying in the building, they're running into the building to keep us and our families safe. Those officers deserve our respect, our admiration, and if I'm the DA, our partnership. George Gascon has destroyed that partnership with law enforcement officers. He's destroyed the partnership with his own prosecutors. He's even destroyed the relationships with victims because of his pro-criminal, anti-victim policies. I can and will restore those partnerships across the board.
Yeah, because I can't understand these people who hate police because if they face trouble personally, them or their family or their friends, who are they going to call then? Who are they going to call? They can't call the Ghostbusters, right? I mean,
no, if someone's breaking in your house and a bunch of people and they got guns, you're not calling a social worker to deal with them. You have to call people who are trained to deal with people who want to engage in violent conduct to keep you safe. Again, it doesn't mean that if some law enforcement officer, his or herself, breaks the law, that I'm going to turn my head away. I'm not. They will be prosecuted as well. But again, the overwhelming number of police officers are trying to do a very difficult and dangerous job to benefit us every single day. And I will be their partner. Those officers, I will absolutely be their partner if I become district attorney.
Yeah, Nathan. So I had this idea. I talked about this with John McKinney about it, and also another candidate. But how about you, when you become LA County District Attorney, to have like a PR department about how much good work the police or the law enforcement has done, because most people don't even hear about it, know about it. It doesn't hit the news, but I think there should be like a web page or something of, collective, because I bet they do a lot of good, but nobody notices it. So
Right.
I
No,
feel
they
like
do a
they're good
tremendous
at
amount
PR.
of good. And you're right. We will try to amp up the PR department at the district attorney's office to work with law enforcement to get the word out. I mean, it's a word where the community needs to understand that law enforcement is on their side, that they're working incredibly hard under difficult conditions to do the job every single day. In fact, they're missing thousands of law enforcement officers. We're down 1,000 officers for LAPD. We're down 1,000 deputies in the sheriff's department. So the remaining law enforcement officers have almost double duty, and they are doing their best every single day, to again bring us safety for ourselves and our families.
Okay. How can people support your candidacy? How can they volunteer? Can you please tell us your website? Just
Certainly.
promote yourself.
Please go to my website, which is my name, Nathan, Nathan, Hochman, Hochman, no spaces or dots. So just nathanhochman.com. And if you go there, you'll see opportunities to volunteer, to donate, to get information. It'll be links to social media. It has a whole bunch of, it's a great portal to be able to hopefully spread the message. Because if you're listening in on this podcast and you can contact your social media, I mean, we can turn hundreds or thousands of listeners into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of voters. And that is the absolute goal.
Mm-hmm. I even saw one Korean link there on your website. You had some Korean
Yes.
as well.
No, we're doing our best to get out to all the communities across Southern California, across this LA County, and there are a lot of them. But it's a great county. And it would be, again, an absolute privilege and honor to be the next district attorney.
All right. Thank you very much, Nathan, for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck on your campaign.
Really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.